I'm Sham. Welcome to UnScene. In this show, Lyndelle Green will give an insight into her career as an acting coach, and Charlotte Watson will be talking to Jennifer Dean about the theatre scene. But first, Salik Silverstein has had a long career in film as a director. He has directed short films, feature films, and high-end television commercials. We had a chat earlier. Salik, hello, welcome.
Hi, Sham, thank you very much.
How are you doing today?
Good. It's beautiful and sunny in Melbourne.
Oh,
what
isn't
better
it
place
always?
to live, especially at St Kilda.
I know, sometimes I consider moving to Brisbane, but then I think the art scene is too dead, so we all better just like stick it out here, I think. So, Salik, let's just introduce the viewers to a little bit about you. Like, where did you get your start?
Oh,
That's a big question.
Yeah, look, even as a kid, I loved movies. Every Saturday afternoon was in the movie houses, usually watching westerns or sci-fi, B-grade sci-fi.
Nice.
I come from a family that also is quite heavily involved in aspects of the art, writers, musicians, and I'd always been drawing since a little kid, and my fantasy was to be a film star when I was 5.
Ah,
Yeah,
gotcha. Okay,
yeah.
okay. So when you first kind of started imagining your future, you thought acting?
Yeah, well, actually acting and directing.
Ah, okay.
As I got older, people like Woody Allen were my heroes as far as being able to act, and I realised I'm not that good an actor, so being behind the camera was better.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. And you could do all that anyway. And the thing I discovered too is that filmmaking is actually all the arts in one space.
That's very true. Yeah,
You know,
it's
so-
design. It's
And so ever since a kid, I've been in theatre, always drawing, painting.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
things really took off when my father bought me a Super 8 camera.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how you got your start.
Yeah,
really?
well, he was always filming family anyway.
Yeah.
So when I was about 12, he got me, and my first film was about a drunk who lived in our laneway next to my house.
Ah.
Yeah, and it didn't quite work because the drunk was my 12-year-old friend. And,
Okay. So yeah. All right.
so he overacted a little bit, shall we say.
Oh, okay.
But we had great fun doing it, and
Yeah.
that was it, off and running.
Did you write the script for that yourself?
Well, I don't call it writing. We sort of got out there and made it up.
Yeah, improvised,
Based on a true story about a bum who did live there.
That's so funny. Oh my god. Yeah.
But
I remember.
right into social issues, right from the beginning.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And what? Did that movie go anywhere, or was it like a home screening?
No, not even a home screening.
Oh my god. That's so funny.
Yeah, it might have been a home screening, yeah.
So when did you first actually start putting your own work out there into the industry?
I made my first real films in my last year of high school with 2 other friends who were also, we were all in the art class together, we're all painters. And we also were in love with film as an art form. We started making experimental films. We had showings at places like the Melbourne Film Cooperative, which was in Lygon Street in Carlton. That was people like John Flouse were there, or there was the whole sort of bubbling up of Melbourne talent, not just in film but theatre, and eventually the Cantrills. I don't know if you know of, I'm sorry, I've just forgotten their first names, but they had a magazine called Cantrills Film. There were magazines on filmmaking, experimental films, what being made. This is the late 60s.
Yeah, right.
And they saw some of our work and took it around to various high schools showing it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and what was interesting was no one had really heard of film back then in the education department, and we applied to actually enter the film as part of our last year assessment. And that was the first time they had allowed film into and what we used to do, like, you know, we'd be shooting Super 8 and partly animation, real life, stop frame. We'd go and then show it, and we'd have a record player and we'd put on Pink Floyd, like Ummagumma or something of that nature. They were very, so it made it very trippy.
Yeah.
And we'd do things like stop the projector in the gate and the film would start to burn and then we'd let it go. And
interesting. Yeah, so you were playing with all of those kind of like, messing with the actual film.
As an art form. And one screen that we had, we did a show where we did a number of screens, and the screens were, one screen was corrugated iron that a projector was showing on. Another screen was a bit of paper that had been cut. And so it was like a curtain where once you walked through that, the image that was projected on it got disturbed.
Interesting.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. So just going back to what you said earlier, so at the time in the 60s, there was no like film as a subject in high school?
No. No,
yeah.
definitely.
Okay.
One of us, the three of us, one ended up going to the National Gallery school there, and myself, I ended up going to PIT art school, which was then in Bandura.
Yeah. Right.
So it was, we'd all never really thought about doing film. It didn't really exist. The occasional films. I mean, one of the films that the three of us loved was a thing called They're a Weird Mob.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I've heard of it.
Yeah, and it's about an Italian coming to Australia and how the cultural clashes. But that wasn't an Australian film. It might have had Australians in it.
Yeah.
And it was only really in the early 70s, or started to get towards the late 60s, that government started to support the film industry by through money, script development. I got my an experimental film fund money back in 1973 to make a short film. So it's just was all growing. The whole thing was bubbling, and it was probably partly to do with the era of the 60s of questioning authority, finding your own place, experimentation.
Yeah, right.
So it was a really interesting time, and going to art school, they had a film course there, and it was run by a guy named Bert Delling, who was really, in a way, the first, got one of the first Australian features up in Australia called Pure Shit.
Yeah.
You can edit that out if it's too
I
dirty
think
for you.
I think we're all right.
Yeah, nowadays it's got pure.
It's in.
Yeah, because now you see it advertised and it's got pure and S exclamation.
Like
yeah. And that was also partly funded by, I think it was Odyssey House, a drug rehabilitation place. And of course, all of us students worked on it.
Yeah,
he got us for free.
Use the student labour, why not?
Yeah, and he was fantastic because he started to show us that film was a viable art form. He helped all of us get grants to make short films while at school there.
Yeah.
And so that was a real Kickstarter for me. I sort of left painting behind. And I was doing a lot of cartooning anyway, or comic book type stuff, which easily translated into film.
Yes, definitely.
So that was, all those were big influences on me. So, and interesting, out of that period, there out came people like James Grant. James Grant is a very well-known cinematographer. Barry Dickens, the writer. There were a whole lot of people who just came out and put out so much influence into the film industry after the inspiration from Bert.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Oh, it's so cool to hear about.
Yeah.
How do you feel like the industry as a whole, at least mostly in the terms of like film, TV, how do you feel like it's changed from then compared to now?
Well, it's a lot more slicker.
So slicker, goes without saying. Structurally, more like.
Yes. I mean, especially back then, a lot of people were self-learning. There wasn't that experience in the industry. By the time I really got out in the look, it was so bad here for me personally. I packed up the 3 films that I made and went to Hollywood. You know, I had that Hollywood dream. Boy, was that shattered quick.
Oh, Hollywood.
Gee, I missed Melbourne coffee.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. How bad is American coffee?
And living in Los Angeles wasn't my kind of city. It's too much beach. I have a lot more sort of Melbourne's got a lot more European influence too, which I like. So it was very difficult. When I came back, I was incredibly lucky, but I've been always making my own films anyway. I got work in Hollywood, but I realised it wasn't for me. It's not the way that I worked. I didn't like the experiences on those huge studio shoots.
How did you feel like they differed from the way you were working here in Australia?
We were doing art and they were doing commerce.
Yeah, I can relate, yes. Yeah, I get that. Yeah. There'll be more of Salik's interview to come in upcoming episodes. Lyndelle Green has over 20 years of experience in the performing arts industry and has received recognition for her coaching work from Macquarie University. Hi Lyndelle, thanks so much for joining us today at UnScene. So Lyndelle, do you want to tell our viewers a little about yourself, a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, I teach acting. I'm an acting teacher, and I initially taught high school for maybe 20 years, and then I met this amazing man in Sydney who's become a really close friend of mine, but he was first of all a teacher, Anthony Wong. He's an amazing actor and teacher, and he introduced me to a style of acting training that a lady called Ivana Chubak teaches, and she lives and works in Los Angeles, and I ended up going across there for 6 months initially, or 3, and then 3, and then and trained with her. And I trained as an actor, but also to get this accreditation to teach her technique in Australia. Yeah. And then last year I won an award, a teaching award. It was a scholarship. It was the Elizabeth Kemp. She's in heaven now. Yeah. Beautiful Elizabeth Kemp, very, very wonderful woman, and it was named after her, and I won this scholarship to then go back and do some further training. So I've ended up doing probably almost a solid year with Ivana. Yeah. And so I tend to sort of teach. So I don't teach high school anymore. No. I mean, bless them. But I do teach young actors, lots of young actors, but not in the school environment.
Yes.
So I teach all over Melbourne, and prior to this current situation, I was also travelling a bit as well. So Queensland, New South Wales, even Adelaide, but now not
very
doing
much
any of that.
No, very much stuck here. Yeah, great. So I loved Elizabeth Kemp. I was fortunate enough to do one of her masterclasses as well.
You? Oh, wonderful.
It was insanely amazing. Yeah. But just for people who aren't familiar with Chubak and Kemp, would you like to talk a little bit about some of those kind of techniques and methodologies, what they'd entail?
Well, certainly Elizabeth and Ivana are different.
Very different.
Elizabeth's work is based on the method and the Actors Studio in New York, and Ivana, even though probably people do think her work is that base, it's probably not. However, everything is, Kerry Armstrong I think said this, but it's funny, I'm going to give it to her, and perhaps it's not her quote, but I do love Kerry, and so therefore I'll give it to her. In acting training, we're all climbing the same mountain, just finding different ways to get to the top.
Yeah.
Kerry or whoever.
Yeah, Kerry.
I'm going to give it to Kerry. And and that is the truth. So we're all in service of the same thing. Depending, I mean, obviously there's different styles of theatre, and of course there's non-naturalistic, but I mean in most of the things we're watching and in our current binging that we do. We're so committed to the truth and believing that we get so wrapped up in the story, and that's what all of the techniques really aim to do. Ivana's work and perhaps also Elizabeth's, not perhaps, definitely the method, it's very much about personalising. So Ivana, you know, funnily enough, she'd love me saying this. In Russia, they've called her the next Stanislavski.
Oh, right.
But it is, everything comes from him, and so we're all just, you know, aiming to imagine what it would be like to be this person, as you very well know. I'm not speaking to someone who doesn't completely understand this. And so Ivana has these 12 steps that her students go through, and then Elizabeth obviously has a different technique. And you know, I worked, observed an amazing director, Brendan Maher, who directed Outlander, some of Outlander work recently. He believes in the students thinking of images. So anything that will serve telling the truth.
Yes, yeah, they're all really just branches of the same tree, right?
I believe so, but you know, we wouldn't perhaps say that if Ivana was sitting here.
No.
And actually, it was Larry Moss who said that Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg, even though they were very different, if they came down from heaven and sat next to each other, they'd probably shake hands today, or not today.
Oh well, not today, no.
But
they do the elbow.
You know, the
elbow
irony
tap.
is that they were so different, but in fact now probably would sit there and go, yes, we're actually really wanting the same thing.
Yeah, that's it. There's a shared goal.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, at what point in your life did you go, I want to become a teacher?
I didn't know what I wanted. I was so naive as a young person. I tell my acting students this. If I'd walked into a Lyndelle Green class at 18, I would have called my mummy. There was no mobiles, but I would have found a phone and said, come and pick me up, because I don't know what this is. Because I was very naive, a young girl. So I did a business degree because my father said I should. And that was ridiculous. But I loved performing. So I did all that stuff, you know, when you were young, dancing class and theatre shows. And then my drama teacher at school, Donald Brown, I will not forget this, and I've since spoken with him, said, you should be a drama teacher. And I said, don't be ridiculous. What money are you going to earn being a drama teacher? How silly. Yeah. And anyway, I went and did the business degree and then realised that wasn't for me, and ended up doing teaching and told him, obviously. Thank you. I should have. So I became a teacher, and then high school, and then while I was teaching, I started acting and doing a lot of acting in Brisbane, and I was teaching screen acting. I don't know why, but that just happened. So then it all kind of spiraled, and I ended up. Yeah, life's funny the way. I ended up teaching English. I didn't even teach drama, but then I became a teacher and I marked the HSC. Yeah. Lots of different things I've done, and then I found Anthony and moved into acting. But it's a really interesting question, Sham, because I thought I really wanted to be an actor. And, you know, I did all these TV commercials and I did a film and I did lots of theatre. But after I came back from being with Ivana, I just didn't want to do that anymore. And it's so hard to even say that out loud because I can't believe it. Yeah. You know, that I wouldn't, because I'm a real show-off and I love, I'd love to sing and dance. Singing, not so good for me. But, well, good for me, not for the people listening. And I teach, you know, some people who are my age, and one particular person who's become a really dear friend, and I helped her, worked her on a play with her, and it's very much a play I could have done. And I remember sitting there watching her up there with a very famous actor, so it was a really high-level performance, and I thought, no, I'm not jealous. I don't wish I was there. I'm actually happy, you know. Yeah, it's funny. It's a really good question. When I was teaching high school, I put myself in Greece. I thought I'm about to say a naughty word. I won't.
No, you can swear. I
thought, fuck, I'm going to be in this bloody show. So I cast myself as the teacher, you know. Yeah. And the kids said, Miss Green, you can't be, you know, in it. And I said, I will be in it. And I remember what I was doing. I directed Anything Goes, and I used to go on stage and move the sets. They'd say, Miss Green, get off. But I just loved being on stage.
Love getting involved, just getting on it.
Yeah, and now it's an irony because I do get quite a bit of anxiety. I suffer with anxiety, and I think that would overwhelm me if I was to be on set or, it's a funny old life that we lead, and the way it's been so tough. I mean, for me, for so many, our industry, I can't even, it's just devastating. I had Harry Potter tickets,
No.
but we were very lucky. I mean, there would be people that have just, I was so lucky. I didn't have flights that I had to deal with, but I just got my little refund from a Harry Potter ticket, and that was easy. I feel for some people with their families, they would have had to.
That's it. Like, pretty much every aspect of our industries have been suffering, and it's like, what does a post-COVID, arts world look like? Because definitely I think, I'm just going off of guesses here, but I think within the next year, we're still not going to be 100% back to the way we were.
But you know what someone was saying, and isn't it true? We're all at home binging all the stuff that we do, so they've got to. But
somehow,
you've got to support.
Exactly. Somehow it's not important.
Oh my
somehow
God,
it's not a real job.
Tell you what.
Yeah.
You know what I've loved, and I teach musical theatre. I don't teach musical. I teach
You teach the acting part.
I love their discipline, and I watching them online doing their, the Hamilton people were doing something, and they're in their garden and they're fucking committing fully. I saw these people, the Cats cast, and they were fully committed in their garden or in their, and I just find that so impressive.
Yeah.
And it's been lovely to watch that, and I just think, support these people. My goodness, I watch a lot. I claim it on my tax, Netflix. But I have watched, and there's been so much great stuff to watch.
Yeah.
So one would assume, I don't know what you all think, but surely is there going to be more Australian content made? Are people going to want to shoot here because it's troublesome to? I don't know what's going to happen, but
from what I've heard, they've been saying that Australia and New Zealand, well, I don't know about Victoria right now because apparently we're in critical zone, but they've been saying that Australia and New Zealand's industries are going to be the first to start back up. And so fingers crossed for all of us out there that there are going to be more opportunities for overseas productions to come here and film. Well, beautiful. Thank you so much, Lyndelle, for coming in. It was lovely talking to you.
You're so welcome.
Jennifer Dean owns Melbourne Shakespeare Company and has directed many plays. But when the pandemic hit, like everything else, her season stopped. Charlotte Watson is with her now.
Well, Sham, we are joined here today by Jennifer Sarah Dean, who is the founder and artistic director of Melbourne Shakespeare Company. So welcome, Jennifer. Thank you so much for coming in. What are some of the challenges that you've faced when you were starting the company, and how did you overcome those?
I guess the first one, and a problem a lot, for most people, is financially. How do you do that? So the first show I did, I self-funded. I'd saved up a bit of money from working, and I put that into the production. And luckily, we made money, which was great, and obviously helped us moving forward. And then I was just I used to live in St Kilda, and I had been to the botanical gardens there, and I just was like, this is the most beautiful place and local to me, and really, really a wonderful space. And so I reached out to the council about potentially hiring that as a venue. And they were incredibly supportive and, really wonderful about having us and wanting Shakespeare in the park there. And so they let me know that there was some different funding opportunities available, which I applied for and was very, very fortunate to get. And that obviously alleviated a lot of the pressure from the producing aspect, but by being able to get that grant, which then has kind of snowballed since then with our shows. And each year we're building a bigger audience, and people know who we are now. People actually, come to expect our shows, and they know what to expect when they come to our work. And obviously the more things that we produce and the more people recognize us as a company, the easier it becomes, because people actually are replying to us now to work with us. And also it's easier to get reviews, it's easier to get articles, people are more aware of us. So I think at the beginning it's difficult to kind of get your name out there, and especially if you're trying to do something slightly different, or you're trying to do Shakespeare in a slightly different way, it's difficult to kind of break into the scene. And as we move forward, it becomes, a little bit easier every time, fingers crossed.
Because I was going to say that I actually came and saw a couple of the Melbourne Shakespeare Company shows, and I loved that they were outside in the park in the afternoon, sunshine coming through. And I wanted to ask you, is that something that you had chosen intentionally for Shakespeare, but it sounds like it just sort of all fell together, fortunately for you?
I think I always wanted to do it outdoors. When I was performing and I did those Shakespeare rep seasons, it was always outdoors, and it's kind of definitely a rain or shine thing. And there's lots of really exciting elements that you get when you put theatre outdoors that you don't get in a commercial space or in a venue, because you've got weather, you've got rain, you've got wind, you've got animals, you've got all these kind of crazy things that are involved. And what I love about theatre is, that moment that it's in front of you and it's live and it's real, and, you're never going to have that moment again. Even if the show's repeated, it's not the same. It's different every night. There's different reactions from the audience. There's different other factors. And when you put theatre outside, there's so many other factors that come into play. We've had dogs running across the set. We've had, choruses of birds. We did a production of Romeo and Juliet in 2018, and this one time, it was this gorgeous sunset which was happening right behind where Romeo and Juliet were doing their final, scenes and dying. With the sky had gone bright red, which I think something that only seems to happen in Melbourne. It's amazing. And then suddenly, just as Juliet died, all of these crows just took off in flight behind it. And it was just this insane experience that you would just never get again. And we couldn't have planned ever to happen. And it's just, wonderful moments like that is why I love doing outdoor theatre.
Are you able to take us through some of the steps of how a theatre show is created from the very start to the finish?
So I guess with Melbourne Shakespeare, because I'm the artistic director, and I also do a lot of the producing, it's slightly different to a traditional theatre show. So normally with other work that I do, I might be approached by a producer, or I might approach a producer to put a show on. Whereas with the Melbourne Shakespeare, because I often take on both of those roles, it's a little bit different because, I think of a concept and then I decide if I want to do it, which is very different to most theatre, but also wonderful and exciting. So once we would sit down as a board, because we have a board of directors, and we will discuss what shows we want to put on for the next year, and when we want to put on shows. So up to this point, we normally put shows on in December and March. Moving forward, we had actually this year booked a show for September as well. Unfortunately, that isn't going ahead now, but we were looking to expand our repertoire and our season to bring on the third show this year. But normally we would do the two shows. So we would sit down as a team and discuss what shows we wanted to put on, why we felt they were good for this season, and kind of have a little bit of a discussion about that as a team. Once we've decided on the show, we will decide on a concept. So with our work, the text is the text. We do abridge it down to 90 minutes, and then we also normally put a music or design concept behind it, and that doesn't have to be overly specific, but generally will influence a lot of the decisions that we then go on to make. So for example, with Taming of the Shrew, that was the first piece that we've done where we actually used period costume, but we really wanted to play on the play within a play element of the piece. So we kind of came up with this concept of these people are putting on a play, and it was going to be the theatre company. From the moment you arrive, it wasn't Melbourne Shakespeare Company putting on a play, it was Sly's theatre company putting on a play, and that was the concept. And then within that, they'd put on a reasonably traditional play, but Sly, who was the fictional director, as it were, was going to want to be involved all the way through. So that performer would keep coming on and doing songs and kind of linking all the scenes together and trying to get involved with the audience, even though he wasn't meant to be on stage. He kind of wanted that role. So once we've come up with a concept like that, it then goes off to each of the design teams. So I will edit the script, and then I would pass that to each of the designers to come back with their kind of concept within the overall design that we've come up with, and then we brainstorm that and we discuss it lots of times and we go back and forth with ideas until we're really happy with kind of the design elements of the piece. And I normally am kind of workshopping the text as we go with that, because often the text edit will come through that design as well, so that we can pull out certain points that are relevant to the design concept that we've gone with. Once we've done all that, we do casting. Something that's really important to me, which I actually kind of didn't mention earlier, is also about making Shakespeare and making theatre very, very accessible. So we always do open castings for every one of our shows. So we accept expressions of interest, normally for about a 2-week period. Unfortunately, I would love to see everybody who applies, but it is really difficult to do that, just because now we do, get 300 plus expressions of interest each time.
Wow.
So I try and see at least 100 people every session, and it normally takes us about 3 days. So it's a pretty lengthy process, and I'll try and rotate that, so I won't always see the same people every time. I'll try and see new people, and also sometimes see people again, because something I always want to say to performers is, often it's not that you weren't incredible and that isn't the reason we didn't cast you. It's just because, I was going with a concept where I wanted to change the gender of that character, or I was going with a concept where I was looking for somebody older or younger, and it, often has nothing to do with them. So I do often see people more times because I'm like, oh, you were wonderful. I really want to give you a role. It's just not this piece. So we do our castings, and then we go into rehearsals. So with rehearsals, we split because we have a lot of music and dance in our shows. So there is music rehearsals, choreo rehearsals, and then the directing rehearsals that I take. And I always bring on didn't used to, but now always bring on a choreographer and a musical director who do those elements. And we start rehearsals, and we rehearse part-time. So we do about 6 weeks rehearsal part-time. And then we open our season. I think hopefully that was a quick. And there's lots of marketing and promotion and interviews and all sorts of fun stuff that we do along the way as well.
Creatively, what does the future hold for you?
So we were really fortunate. We managed to get one of the Melbourne City Council COVID response grants for a project that I've wanted to do for a really long time, which is called Melbourne Shakespeare Studio. So that is a new project for us. We've not done indoor work before, but it's actually designed to be a project where we nurture and support upcoming female directors. So I will act as a mentor on those shows. So I will produce and mentor the director. And then they will get the opportunity we'll work together in adapting the text, we'll work together in communicating with the design team, we'll work together to bring that show to life. I'm really, really fortunate to get a grant to be able to kind of kickstart that. So actually, at the moment, I'm currently working with our first young director. Her name is Aisha Gibson, and we're working on a project of King Lear, which is really exciting. We're just in kind of pre-production and development for that at the moment. So working on concept and working on script adaptation, and then moving forward through this 6-week process that we're kind of undertaking at the moment, we'll be bringing on kind of designers and creatives, and then eventually looking to bring on a team once we can confirm a venue, once we know kind of a bit more about what's happening.
Wonderful. That sounds fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your information and all your gems. Thank you again, and all the best for all the new productions to come.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. That's all from us this week. If you want to get in touch, send us an email at ideas@studioemedia.com.au. Thanks for watching. See you next time.